Right, and welcome to River Talk. Today is the 26th of April, and we're just going to be, our conservative counterparts are not here today. We're not sure what the mix-up is, so we're just going to be going over current events since we don't have a second side to debate with.
Taking a liberal turn.
This is going to be a pretty liberal version of the podcast. Sorry about that, guys. If we have any conservative viewers, you might want to go watch reruns of, the O'Reilly Factor.
Spoiler alert!
No.
Okay, so does anyone have anything they want to jump on with? I woke up this morning actually and saw that we were putting up a missile defense system in South Korea today. It just seems like every day is another escalation.
It's causing a big stir in South Korea, especially with the natives there. They believe that it's just going to escalate the situation, which, if you believe that's probably what Trump is trying to do, but on the other hand, the South Koreans don't want the situation to escalate, because who wants to get nuked?
I would say it's kind of like a double-edged thing.
'Cause
you want to protect, we want to protect this country, but how far do we go with protecting before it becomes antagonizing? And what do we do?
And here's the serious thing. Supposedly North Korea has between 12 to 20 nuclear missiles at most. We don't know if those are just giant green tubes or if they're actually nuclear missiles. We really have no idea.
Well,
but here's the problem. If war breaks out at all, we know that Seoul, which is the capital of South Korea, and Japan are probably going to be likely targets we hit first. So, it's a very interesting situation we put ourselves in because we've waited so long to actually take action against North Korea. It seems like the past two presidents that have been in office just kind of, let them do their own thing.
In other news, the governor of Iowa is stepping down within the next week, and he's actually traveling to Washington tomorrow to begin talks with the Senate. And next week is his confirmation hearing to become the new ambassador to China. And Lieutenant governor is actually taking over.
So, what are Branstad's qualifications to be ambassador to China?
Off the top of my head, I don't know very much, but I know that he's had a very good relationship.
The Chinese president, I think, has actually visited Iowa before.
Yes, he has a very good relationship with the Chinese government.
I suppose with all this tough talk on China throughout the entire campaign, he'd need someone who's goody-goody with the president of China to kind of maybe come back from all of that tough talk.
We'll see how that works, because he was buddy-buddy with Putin, and now Russia hates us.
It's an interesting time to be alive. We say this every day, every time we do this podcast. And
What
this
a
also
wonderful time to grow up in.
I know, right? Do you see we're going to hop on a NAFTA?
Oh, wait.
Yeah, apparently the White House
Did not
is
see that.
preparing to, from what it looks like, he's going to set an executive order to quit NAFTA, although I think logically that would have to pass Congress first if we're going to jump out of a trade deal with, Canada and Mexico.
Well, did you hear that he's imposing a 20% tariff on Canadian lumber?
Oh, really?
Well, I feel like from the beginning he had said this was hurting us and we need to get rid of it, whatever, but,
To be honest, I think tariffs are a great idea. For one, I hate to force somebody to do anything, and it's one way to get jobs to come back to America.
Mm-hmm.
And things might be a little higher, but there's also going to be a lot more jobs. There's going to be a lot more money flowing through the economy here instead of overseas.
Because, when you get to this kind of situation, you kind of have two choices. You can either, restrict trade with a certain country, or you can put tariffs, so then that's a little bit of protectionism on U.S. companies. And it seems as though tariffs, even some of the, one of the founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton, I think, when he was our first Treasury Secretary, I believe, and he, kind of came up with this crazy idea that if you're going to have U.S. companies be competitive with European companies so we don't get royally screwed over, is that we have tariffs, and very large tariffs to protect U.S. companies.
Exactly.
It just seems like a very common sense idea.
You never know. Common sense, obviously, not many people have anymore. But another big thing is his tax plan and all of his tax cuts. He's covering corporate, tax cuts for the wealthy, and actually tax cuts for the middle and lower class as well, too, which is all fine and dandy. But the main opposition to that is it could boost the deficit, and where are we going to get the money to cut for that decrease in
I was
revenue.
gonna say, like, as nice as that sounds, you do have to take that into account. Tax money goes to fund, like, everything. So if you do cut it so low, well, it's beneficial to, like, in the here and now, what's it gonna be in the long term?
Exactly, but you have to understand though that this is his proposition, and once it
Yeah.
goes to Congress, it's obviously not gonna go any lower.
Mhm.
That's just how it works. I wanna buy something from you, I offer you $20, you offer me 30, I offer you 22, you offer me 28, and we meet in the middle somewhere around 25. So we can expect that at some point throughout the year, before next tax season, that we're probably gonna owe less in taxes. Whether or not we're gonna get that money back in the budget or somehow from somewhere else, that's really up in the air for now.
You know, the corporate tax rate right now is 35%. Trump wants to lower it to 15%. And so, giving cuts to, poor and middle-class Americans, sure, but, here's what I don't understand. The argument with trickle-down economics is that, okay, so you give tax breaks to large corporations, they in turn will use that money to invest it in our country, build new factories so they can build more stuff. But here's the problem. If you're paying your workers to a point where they are living paycheck to paycheck, where they, don't make enough to make ends meet, do you think they're gonna, buy those products? This whole idea of they're gonna build more factories or reinvest in the U.S. is to me is a load bull, because they just keep it in their pocket. There's no way
Exactly.
if nobody's there to buy, if the demand isn't there, they're not gonna bother building new factories, which is what, Republicans like.
Exactly. The demand's the same, and they end up making more money, put more money in their pocket, because ultimately that's the goal of any business, is to make as much money as possible. Now, when you get these big corporations, that's the big hand of government, is do we keep their taxes high or do we cut the taxes? Because it's really up to them what they're going to do or not. And once you start slapping regulations and all the policies and all this stuff, then you hear an uproar from the other side. So it's, what are you supposed to do?
I don't know, I always like to say the right is a little regressive. I don't think they've kind of came to, modern day.
You can't interfere on the freedom of corporations by telling them what they can and can't do.
Citizens United, that is the biggest problem we have right now. So I think this was back in, gosh, what year do you think it was? Well, I'll explain it quick. But Citizens United was basically this whole idea. Okay, so if people, like regular average day people, can put money to support political candidates, then so should big corporations. And big corporations were arguing, well, we should be able to put more money in because we want to get our agendas across. Well, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of corporations being able to put an unlimited amount of money in our political system. And so we've turned into a country where our politicians are basically selected by the highest bidder, which of course can be any U.S. corporation or bank. So I'm actually going to look up and see when.
Well, while you're doing that, on another note, here's a headline from the Washington Post. Trump orders review of national monuments, vows to end quote, to end these abuses and return control to the people, end quote. Now, I have a problem with this. There's a reason that these former presidents have designated this land federally to be national monuments, is because it's just the same as taking Rocky Mountain National Park, for example, and there's no reason for that's been around for 102 years. There's no reason for the federal government to be taking care of that land. Let's give it back to the people so they can destroy wildlife, pollute the water, and do whatever they please. There has to be a point where there is plenty of land in the United States that people can buy and people can do stuff with. We don't need to be destroying these national monuments when there's, even here in Clinton, there's plenty of lots, there's plenty of buildings that are abandoned. Tear it down and redo. I was just listening to the news this morning. There's these places that are abandoned or run down that they owe a bunch of back taxes on, and these people want to buy them, but they don't want to pay the back taxes on top of doing all this work. And the city was talking about forgiving the back taxes as long as they, I guess, promise to fix up the house. So, I don't know, if you could work something out, like, with all of these, I don't know, Clinton's a very good example for that. You have buildings that were once thriving and businesses that were thriving and gone out of business. If you can somehow, it's a hard line because you can't really put all the government's money into having people do this, but at some point, people need that little push or, just a little extra help to be able to do this. So, I don't know. I think we have plenty of land. We have plenty of land that's abandoned with buildings and all that kind of stuff that we do not need to be taking anything that has to do with national parks or monuments.
Yeah, and so anyone who knows me, I'm a huge environmentalist. So that's the part that gets me is we have so much that we're doing, and this land was put aside for a reason. And we need to take care of it. If we're not going to take care of the rest, at least have this little bit that we can. These monuments, these parks, they are important.
I mean, Theodore Roosevelt, he was the one who created the national park system. Even he understood that, the world, he was a big nature guy. He went bird watching a lot and stuff like that. He enjoyed nature so much that he thought it would be absolutely stupid to have every single plot of land in this country be used for corporate profit. That he thought that, land all across the country had to be set aside so, children would be able to look at it and say, wow, this is Mother Nature, this is the earth that provides for us and everything like that. He just had a great appreciation for nature, and I wish that our current administration had the same belief, but...
And according to the Department of the Interior, the National Park Service, which is in charge of managing all this land, only 3.4% of all the land in America is federally owned for the purpose of it being a national park or a national land. That is already a small, minute amount.
I'd say that's almost nothing.
Exactly. And we don't need to be taking from that. If anything, we need to be putting more land in. But obviously that's
Oh,
not...
I agree. For protecting
especially in the South, a lot of these monuments are, for a lot of different states, a great source of pride. Like, even statues like Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis, sure, they may have been traitors during the Civil War, but either way, to their states, to the people that live there, they're somebody they can kind of look back and remember on their, pro-slavery or not, I think it's an important part of our history to still have these monuments around.
Exactly. And if we can't learn from our mistakes, then we're bound to make them again. If we have no idea, if we don't know what we've done wrong in the past, we're bound to make that mistake again. And I watched a great documentary by Michael Moore, and he goes around to all these different countries, taking ideas and things and trying to bring them back to to North America, well, United States, to be more specific. But anyway, he was in a school system in, I believe it was a middle school in Germany, and they take it very seriously, their involvement in World War II and the Nazi era, and they make sure that they know that it's their heritage, and even know that they weren't alive, and they may not have lived there during that time. They take responsibility for it, and they make sure to teach everyone that that's not okay, and by doing that, they ensure that hopefully it will never happen again. And when we start taking away national park, and these national monuments in the South and getting everything that has to do with slavery and the Civil War, then, it may seem like an absurd idea now that we would go back to that, but give us an extra couple hundred years, people forget about it, and, we could go back to something like that. It sounds horrendous, but...
What gets me is some of these things they've done at the dead of night. They don't even have the decency. Do it during broad daylight. They like to kind of just do it when nobody's looking, kind of thing. And that's really, I think, does a great disservice to people.
I'm not a hippie or anything, but if it gets to the point, I'll chain myself to a tree.
They may be hitting statues of Robert E. Lee or Jefferson Davis, but wait until they hit a statue of maybe George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or something like that, just for the sake of profit. These are some of the greatest leaders we ever had, but they're more concerned about, how filled their pockets are than rather how important the national heritage of this country is.
Exactly.
What's up?
I said this too.
Oh yeah, the government shutdown. That's been a big talk of the last probably day and a half. So guess what, guys? The government might be going broke.
That should never happen.
I know.
We should never be forced to shut down.
Didn't this just happen like a few years ago though?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Because
ridiculous.
guess what? A bunch of Republicans, Paul Ryan and his group of lovely Republicans were so... all they want to do is just, cut. And then when it comes to funding things that are important, they really don't care. They want to fund stuff they think is going to...
Well,
I don't want to say they're anti-America, but Jesus Christ, they cut public services all the time. And then they want to put stuff into other things that are irrelevant.
They're only concerned about the bottom line. And they're so set in their ways that they're willing to put millions of people out of work for however long it takes for them to reach a decision because they're so set in their ways. That's exactly the same thing that's going on with Illinois right now. We're going almost 2 full years without a budget. And it's ridiculous because you have all of these, businesses and all these programs that are, Jesus, they're trying to avoid people being on welfare and doing drugs and all of this stuff.
But then they kick them out of their jobs and say, well, tough luck.
And what is a druggie supposed to do after that? It's like, oh, I'm just going to lay on the street and I'm going to fight. No, they're going to go back to using drugs.
I'm going to use a personal story. My brother, he is a cocaine addict, and we had him committed to be treated for the substance abuse. The state said, sorry, we don't have money, tough luck. I mean, it's just like, if the money isn't there, if the state isn't willing to go the extra step for anyone, I mean, he's not going to voluntarily go somewhere. I mean, the state has to do something with them, and it's just like, okay, he can just keep repeating offenses until we can lock him up, and then give him treatment. I mean, why can't I get it now to prevent that?
And that's the main thing with healthcare too. Like with a lot of drug-related issues like that, it's not covered. So instead of preventing all of these overdoses or all these medical problems, it's just pushing off and pushing and pushing until it gets to the point where it's costing them more money.
I was skimming through this, and let's just take a moment to appreciate where the money's going to. 3 days before the deadline to avert a government shutdown, congressional leaders were negotiating the spending proposal on Tuesday that would supply no money for President Trump's promised border wall with Mexico, but would increase funding for White House priorities like the military and border security, which we already have. We now beat the next 12 nations in line for military spending. It's just crazy. It's really crazy.
The shutdown.
The military is more important than people. And I'm not saying the military is an important asset for this country, but I mean national defense is outpacing the general welfare of the public.
What is the point of defending the United States if we have nothing?
Let's say.
Yeah, our education's it's in the 30s, probably 20s, 30s, somewhere in there.
I mean, honestly, every day I have the thought of, well, let's just move to Europe or move somewhere else because honestly, they live wonderful. Everybody thinks that any country besides America, they live horribly. No. I mean, what is it? The country's Slovenia? Yeah, free college, and anybody who moves there, I can pick up. I can go to Chicago O'Hare. I can buy a plane ticket to Slovenia, and I can move in. I can rent an apartment, and I can enroll in college. It doesn't matter.
You know what? Germany's had a national healthcare system since 1876. I mean, if that doesn't say something about they invest in their peoples for a long term. It's a long-term investment when they do these things, and you know what? They make the money back over the long term.
Just like Italy, they have like maybe not that much, but they have over a month of vacation every year, and it's taking care of your employees.
I feel
in the U.S. you're lucky to get 2 weeks.
Exactly. If you treat them well, people take vacations and they have time off, and they come back to work and they're raring and ready to go, and they're awesome, and they never get sick because they're not worked to death. And it's just, it's not right for every country, but we could learn a thing or two.
Definitely.
So we should probably wrap things up.
Yeah, I do believe that's all the time we have for today, guys. We hope you enjoyed this. We're going to wrap it up, though. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Hopefully the other guys will be back.